Our group really focused on the fact that we felt that the community has to own this project and that the community has to be fully engaged in the development and the planning of it. Now we know that the community has a history of not coming out to participate in providing information or feedback, and that is because they've not been educated to being green. And we felt like a really important part was to disseminate information in a lot of different ways, a lot of different avenues, in order to get people to buy in. If they become educated and understand the importance of it, they'll own it. And so that was a really, really huge part of it. Another part of owning it is to talk to the different cultures that live in Compton and to get them to buy in by participating. Some of the indigenous people who originally lived here in Compton might be able to provide some input as far as to the architectural designs or the artistic designs, in addition to all of the other ethnic groups that come in. Maybe an amphitheater would be appropriate with a ceremonial design to it or things like that, so that everybody buys into it. This would also help with the maintenance of the whole creek, because if the people buy in, they're not going to destroy it. They're not going to have taggers going out tagging. And so how do you minimize the cost of maintenance is to get the community to buy in and to help take care of it. One way we felt that would happen is to make the creek a focus for the community as opposed to looking away for it. I know that there was one comment that they were looking at building fences, all fences that look the same down the creek. We thought that it would be a much better use of the creek if the creek was actually the focus for the community and we beautified the creek. Again, cultural buy-in, maybe with murals that were done together with different cultures working together to cross that barrier that we talked about gangs, the tension of gangs and their influence. If we got the gangs to come together and do the artwork and the murals on the creek and make it a focus, then they would buy into it and help to take care of it. So everybody has to buy in, the youth, the older people, everybody. We even talked about possibly making it so beautiful that we would eventually have gondolas going down the creek. And the person before me was talking about like coffee shops, but how about coffee wagons, so that the different vendors could come out with wagons and perch them along the creek, and then they could make it like more European feel or other third world country feels, where you have a lot of little different people in little different wagons selling things along the creek. So as you travel down the creek, you might not be thirsty then, but by the time you get down here, you might say, oh, that coffee sounds really good right now. So if we tried to look inward to the creek and really beautify it, and instead of putting up a fence that would occlude it, make maybe a transparent fence with maybe like a awning over it where it could be green for shade. We talked about shade for the hikers and the bikers, but actually making the creek the focus all the way down to the gateway, where the gateway would be the celebration of biking and hiking down to the gateway. Everybody jump in when you get ready, because I can't remember everything. We talked about an alternative possibly to a supermarket, because we are aware that the economic reasons is why we don't have a supermarket in there. But Compton has a really good farmer's market that we could actually take down to the gateway. And that way, the farmer's market could be there maybe a couple of days a week as opposed to 7 days a week. Maybe some of the vendors would be there every day, I don't know. But that would be an alternative way of bringing in fruits and vegetables that people could afford, or even maybe fresh meats from Richland Farms. Who knows? But it would be definitely a viable alternative to putting in a supermarket, since the developer said he don't know about a supermarket going in. But also, when we talked about the gardens that people could, the community gardens, then the community gardens would have a venue to come and sell their stuff. So you have another buy-in. So we were trying to get all the different elements to buy in and to take ownership of the of the creek. We talked about multi-use public spaces and that the community gardens, that's what you said. Getting the youth involved with maybe selling their wares, developing some artwork that would change over monthly. Maybe there would be some competitions or something like that, where you would have rest places where their art would be displayed on the different little benches where there's restways and, oh, okay, exciting stuff. Okay, we want to also avoid gentrification, which means that once the creek becomes this really beautiful thing, that the people at the lower socioeconomic end can't afford to be there anymore. So we want to make sure that the city looks forward and provides by, I think right now they've committed 20% to low-income housing, but maybe we would boost that up to 50% of low-income housing to guarantee that the low-income people would always be able to have access right on the creek. There would be different levels of participation. Perhaps there might be an area along the creek that could become a multi-use, where there's businesses that front the creek and then the homes are above. And that would be another way to guarantee that people who are small business owners would still be able to participate in the use of the creek. Again, we go back to the process of engaging the community, and we feel like a lot of times that the community doesn't engage because they feel like their voices will not be heard. And even if they come to the meeting, that the things that they say, it will just be pushed aside. So we need to make sure that the community, when they come out with the suggestions, that our politicians and that all of our agencies actually take to heart the suggestions and actually have them come aboard and help with the planning and everything by having more satellite meetings that are more accessible. One complaint was like, this particular meeting was during the day, it was 2 full days, it was expensive, so a lot of the Compton residents couldn't participate because they can't take off from work, couldn't afford the $60. So we need to have a lot more satellite meetings in the evenings, on the Saturdays, at the parks, at the schools. Maybe each school could be responsible for having a parent meeting, educating the parents and the kids, and just getting everybody involved and feeling empowered. I think our whole thing goes to empowerment, doesn't it? Opportunities and constraints. I think a lot of people talked about the maintenance already, and the transportation to the creek, making sure that it's accessible, making sure that it is good for all the different cultures and that the cultures can come together as one. And one example I use is I live in Richland Farms, and we have a little program over there for kids and horses. And in our community, we have a cross-cultural of African Americans and Mexicans and Latinos and whites and Asians. And we are a community. We are a village. Everybody gets along really good. Everybody looks out for each other. But once you go outside of our little community, it becomes a totally different thing. So when people come into our community, they go like, wow, this is an oasis. And it's because of the green, because of the dirt, because of the relationship with the animals and the plants and the growing. And I do believe that this spiritualness of being in the dirt connects us in Richland Farms as one big family. And it could be an example of how we grow the Compton Creek with the greenery and the animals and things like that.